invite and from Migrant Ireland to give this talk. I think it's very relevant with the things that are going on at the moment with the epidemic, and where people are not really in their ideal environment. And so there is an issue with coping strategies that they now have to develop to deal with this new situation. So the topic of my talk, the headline of my talk is Using Your Brain to Beat Worry and Stress. I am a neuroscientist, so that's why I'm focusing on the brain. I've been a neuroscientist for over 30 years, so that's my skill set. Although I am teaching in physiology, that's the body chemistry, the heart, the liver, the lung, the muscle, in the University of Limerick. And I'm coming to you live now from Killaloo, County Clare, which is just north of Limerick City. And so what I'm going to talk to you today about is, first of all, the brain. I'll explain how the brain operates in this sphere of fear and anxiety, why it operates that way, why fear and anxiety and worry and stress are really most prevalent in young people. And as we get older, we develop, our brains mature, so we are less fearful and stressed by that. That's an interesting finding in itself. That's got to do with brain maturity, and I'll talk about that. So if you are ever going to be stressed in your life, it's when you're young, a young adulthood. And that's because the brain isn't fully mature. So I'll talk about that. And then all is not lost, because you grow your way out of it, and you can actually grow your way out of it quickly by learning what it is and what stress is in your brain, what causes stress. And there are techniques I will show you that allow you to grow your brain. It's called neuroplasticity, the ability of the brain to change wiring and shape. And one of the big advantages of neuroplasticity is that worry and stress need not be a permanent burden to anyone. Once they understand what the situation is, they can fast forward their growth, brain growth, into maturity. So knowledge is a very important part of this. Knowing what the problems are, knowing that you are stressed. And a lot of people don't realize that they are stressed. Believe it or not, they actually don't realize that they are stressed. And it's only when they go to their GP or their partner tells them, you know, something is bothering you, that they have to actually interrogate themselves. So knowledge is very important. So this is the topic of main topic of my talk, will be to give you knowledge about understanding worry and stress in terms of the brain. And then I'll show you techniques and how to overcome it, grow your way out of it rapidly. Now, no two people are alike. So no two human brains are similar. So there are many ways to do this. So I'll talk about meditation, and I'll talk about physical exercise and nutrition and mindset, but no two human beings will use the same menu. So I have a number of suggestions at the end that should cater for everyone. Just to let you know that I have an online presence on the Inside the Brain website, where I blog once or twice a week on all matters relating to the brain. So there's the web page there on Inside the Brain. I'm just showing you a blog post from April 10th, 2014. So there's a slide set there, health and well-being for mind and brain. A lot of the slides that I'll show you today are already available on my website. In the SlideShare section, if you go to the bottom of the Inside the Brain website, you'll find all the SlideShares, and you'll be able to source the slides there. I'm also on Facebook, Inside the Brain Facebook, and I'm also on Twitter. So that's one blog on Inside the Brain relating to mental health. Here's another one, Your Brain and the Art of Happiness, from May 9th, 2011. You can go to the bottom of this website, and under the topic box, type in worry or stress or anxiety, and all my blog posts relating to worry and stress, anxiety will come up, save you having to trawl through all the hundreds of blog posts that are there. And also you can type in education, emotion, business, and any of my the relevant blog posts will come up. So that's a resource. Now you know me. Now you know I have an online presence, so you can access that site anytime. Anything on this site is scientifically rigorous, so I would not put anything up on this site unless it was rigorous. So there's a lot. The internet is a great resource, but there's a lot of misinformation out there. So that's why I set up this site, so that any information on the brain is rigorous. I wouldn't put it up otherwise. Right. This is an interesting slide then. At the bottom of the figure here, you have age, your age. So pick whatever age you are. And on the y-axis, then along the side, you have incidence of years lived with disability, as it's called. It's often used in Australia, this type of format, per thousand of population. It's kind of incidence. So along the y-axis is incidence and then age. And these are the illnesses that you would suffer at different ages in your life. And you'll see from this that if you just track down through the colors there, and the key is in the same sequence as the colors on the graph, you'll see that you suffer from very different illnesses at different times of your life. As you get older, the red there at the bottom, cardiovascular, cancer, and respiratory are a big issue as you get older. But do you notice there in the ages 10 to 30 years of age, you have the main distress, the main illness in humans is anxiety, mental distress. So if you are young and suffering from mental distress, well, that's exactly the way. You're not any different to any other younger person. But if it's any consolation to you, if you are suffering from worry and stress or mental distress, it gets better. As you can see, that yellow bar, that yellow area gets narrower as you get older. And so older people into their 40s, 50s, and 60s are less anxious by their very nature. Because you find a lot of young people who say, oh, the old people, they're missing out on all the fun. This is where it's all happening. They're just at home, out in their garden. They're really missing out. This is where all the action is. But actually, older people are a lot less anxious than younger people. And that's got to do with brain maturity. So that brings me to the next slide. So the human brain does not mature all at once. It matures, it takes about 35 years to mature. Now, no two human beings are exactly the same, and human beings have different temperaments. So this slide shows a brain scanning of children from the age of 5 up until the age of 20. I think about 30 children were involved in this. And the color scheme, I don't know if you can see it there, might be blocked out by the picture. The color scheme there is showing you the different maturities of the connections in the brain. So the very dark blue is where connections are fixed. And at the age of 5, you can see there are fixed areas already at the age of 5. The brain has wired up, certain parts of it have wired up. Now, the bottom scheme of brain pictures is looking top down on the brain. So the eyes are up near the 5 there, and the back of the neck is down at the bottom. That's the bottom set of pictures of the brain. And in the top set of slides, you're looking at the brain side on. So the eyes are towards the right, and the back of the brain is towards the left. There's just different angles of the brain shown there. But the point is that the brain does not mature all at once. It takes up to 30 years, even 35 years. It depends on the individual for the brain to fully mature. The first areas of the brain to mature, as you can see, are vision there. You see that arrow, vision, at the back of the head, vision. So a 5-year-old can win a video game with a grandparent. Because vision is first to mature. So children see exactly what adults see. And that's why parents will often shield their children's eyes when there's a distressing scene, because children see exactly what adults see. even at the age of 5 and even younger. So vision is the first to mature, and the maturity then, just focused on the bottom set of slides here, as you can see, that blue area is from the back up to the front of the brain. Maturity starts at the back of the brain and then travels up to the front. So you see vision is first, and now at the age of 5, you see that the very immature areas are at the side of the brain. They're in pink, and they're language. So while a 5-year-old can win a video game against with the grandparent, 70, 80-year-old grandparent, the same 5-year-old cannot win a game of Scrabble with the grandparent, because language is not fully formed until about halfway along that scheme at the age of about 9 or 10. You see that area becomes very blue and it fixes. So from the age of about 5 to 10, 7 to 10 in particular, children are very open to learning new languages. The brain has sensitive periods. So a language is from 5 to 10. And that's why parents often get in au pairs to look after their children, so the children just absorb new languages. There's no effort involved in this, no study. Children will just pick up languages naturally. So the more languages they're exposed to on TV, the more languages they are comfortable with later on in life. And now we know that the more languages you speak, the healthier your brain. And in fact, it can protect you from Alzheimer's disease. Having a second language is a vaccination against Alzheimer's disease later on in life. Bilingual people have a more resilient brain. So bilingualism is now a health initiative, not just an education initiative. So the point I'm making here is that the brain does not mature evenly, and there are certain sensitive times in brain maturity, for instance, language. But do you notice here, if you look at the very end, at the 20 years of age, the final area of the brain to mature are the frontal lobes of the brain just over your eyes. Now, this is important because the frontal lobes are involved in judgment and risk-taking and social interaction. So even at 20 years of age, many individuals don't have a fully mature frontal lobe. The frontal lobe is involved in regulating emotions, developing strategies, delaying gratification. You don't see that in children. They don't have a mature frontal lobe, so children just want what they want and they don't care about the consequences. While it takes up to 20, 30 years, it matures earlier in females than in males, 20 to 30, 35 years before these frontal lobes are developed. And that is the reason why anxiety is prevalent and is a big problem in youth, in young adulthood, because our brains are not fully mature and are unable to regulate. The frontal lobes is a brake mechanism on emotion. Once the frontal lobes are mature, you can control emotion. You can imagine emotion as a horse and frontal lobes as the jockey. And the jockey, if the jockey is experienced, it can pull back the horse. So otherwise, the horse runs wherever it wants. Emotions go wherever they want. So the frontal lobes is the brake mechanism on emotion, and that doesn't develop until the 20s into the 30s. So this is why young adults are vulnerable to worry and stress. So here's a good example of how this works. So here's a cartoon showing a person in the woods. This is taken from an Australian slide. So they have a big problem with poisonous snakes, and all children are taught to recognize snakes, some of which are poisonous, some of which are not, and to avoid them. Down in the brain, far away from the frontal lobes, as you can see there, the amygdala, the almond, and you have one on the left and one on the right. So the almond is the fire alarm. So this person is out in the woods. By way of illustration, this person is out in the woods. They spot this snake. And as you can see, the pathways from the eye, they do go to the back of the brain. Remember, the first area of the brain to mature is the back of the brain. So even a child will recognize a snake. But look what happens when an alert system is in place. So the eyes send the signal quickly to the amygdala first, and the amygdala is the fire alarm. The snake is recognized as potentially dangerous. So that sets off any stress response. You see, the amygdala is the fire alarm. It has a whole pathway that goes down into your spinal cord. It activates the muscles in your body. It tenses up your muscles. It increases your heart rate and your breathing rate. You may even start to hyperventilate here with the shock of seeing this snake. And you'll actually do this before you actually see the snake. This is a very fast circuit. Before you actually see the snake at the back of the head in your visual cortex, you will actually react, because the amygdala is the emergency protection mechanism. It's a fire alarm. Now, there's no frontal lobes operating here, but this person is older, so they have a mature frontal lobe. So the frontal lobes, because they're mature, regulate the amygdala and give time for the person to go, well, oh, it's a brown snake, but it's not a poisonous species of snake. There's no need to react. So the frontal lobes there with the yellow arrow regulate the amygdala and therefore reduce anxiety. Now you understand why worry and stress and anxiety are a problem of youth, because the frontal lobes don't fully mature until the 20s into the 30s. So the young adults are vulnerable. They're vulnerable to making mistakes socially. I mean, you don't want to be overtaken at 80 kilometers an hour by a 17-year-old. You know there's trouble brewing there. Risk-taking, the ability to make a calculated risk is not in young people. They don't have fully developed frontal lobes. Having said that, no two human beings are alike, and some children are already wise at the age of 7, while others at the age of 77 still don't get it, and they're upset with the world because it didn't work, things didn't work out. So no two human beings are the same, but I'm giving you the general format here of how the brain matures, and that is why worry and anxiety are a big problem in youth, because the frontal lobes aren't fully developed. The brake mechanism isn't there to turn off the alarm, the amygdala. And now, worry and stress, worry is about imaginary things. So we don't just worry, as we evolved, we worried about being bitten by poisonous snakes, being eaten by bears, dying of starvation, and having nothing to eat. These are things that really worried us, and we had to do something quickly about this. So we either ran after food to eat it, or we fight or flight. We had a fight or flight mechanism. But now we live in a comfortable world, so we don't have these threats. But the amygdala is still active. And if it doesn't find something in the outside world to react to, it can often react to internal thoughts, worries. So why do people worry? People worry because they think, if they analyze, their worry is essentially about uncertainty. And we live in an uncertain world. This person was in the woods, minding their own business, and they didn't plan for this snake to appear, and it was unexpected. So the world is not here for our certainty. We live in an uncertain world. And some personalities believe that one way around this is to analyze everything intellectually, so to use thought processes, a kind of thought process to overanalyze, and that gives them, it's a kind of coping mechanism, but it's actually a kind of self-torture, and it doesn't, when taken to an excess, it certainly, and it often leads to inaction. Now, a small amount of worry is not a bad thing. You sit into a car with your partner, and you notice that your partner hasn't fastened their seatbelt, and you worry about that, and you tell them, fasten their seatbelt. So worry is protective in small doses, like everything, in moderation. The problem is when it becomes excessive and starts to interfere with your ability to notice that your partner didn't have their seatbelt on. Because if there's too much worry going on in your head, you're less aware of what's going on. So everything in moderation. So a small amount of worry is a good thing. But the problem is the frontal lobes are not fully developed in young adults. And that is why random worries, random imaginary snakes cause this excessive alertness and stress in the body. And this can have physical, interrupt sleep. It can interrupt your sleep, interrupt your ability to enjoy just a time in the garden, go for a walk, enjoying a movie, reading a book. The worry can interfere with this. So it can interfere with the quality of life. So now you understand why the frontal lobes are so important. And is there any way that we can help our frontal lobes to mature? And I'll talk about that shortly. There are techniques, now that we know what the problem is, immaturity in the frontal lobes, there are techniques you can use that selectively strengthen the muscle in your the muscle in your frontal lobes. It's called focused attention. And that's what your frontal lobes are all about. Focused attention, this time focusing on the amygdala, that's when it's mature. But if it's not there, you need to start flexing the muscle of attention, which is developing the thickening out the connections in your frontal lobes. So imaginary worries then replace the snake. There's also very heavy stresses now in our lives. Here's just a list of 8 stresses. We all have to deal with this: intensive care of others, looking after other people at the expense of yourself, pushing yourself too hard, heavy workloads. This can be a big issue when working from home, when you don't really know when your downtime is, and you always feel that you have to be doing something, or the work just gets spread out over 18 hours instead of over 5, and you're kind of constantly procrastinating, getting the worry about that is interrupting the rest of your time. You have no photocopy machine. How do you PDF the documents? So there's lots of issues where people expect the same output from you. You don't have a photocopy machine in your house. So all these you left your stapler in your office at work, and you've no stapler. So you have all these documents and you can't so all of these things can lead to stress and worry. The organizational pressure, where certain people are demanding too much from you, or different people are demanding too much and they don't understand that you're already interacting with other projects. Long hours on the job, ironically enough, that can happen as you work at home. You can spend more time on the job in your head than when you're actually at work, physically at work in an office in Limerick or Dublin or wherever you work. Inability to set appropriate boundaries. You can get swamped. You can get swamped by other issues that because you can't, and you can become ineffective. If you haven't the boundary there, you become ineffective. You just get swamped. Boredom itself is a stressor, and often we're driven by boredom to go and do other boring things like browse the internet. So instead of being bored watching TV, we could become bored browsing the internet. So we replace one set of boredom with another set. There's no relearning taking place. There's no learning taking place in boredom. You're not upskilling yourself. It's a waste of time. And I showed you that kind of the Scrabble cubes there to show you that stress, if it's not dealt with initially, can spiral into a big black hole. And of course, depression is the center of that black hole. You don't want to go there. Depression is where you are not learning anymore. You go into a hibernation. And so spotting stress, being aware that you're stressed, is half the battle. Being aware that you are stressed is some people do not realize they're stressed, and before they know it, they're in depression. So spotting stress early on is very important, and using these techniques I'll show you about. So I've just put this up. It's probably the final technical slide you'll see. But how do you measure stress? Well, GPs and other healthcare workers have what's called a social readjustment rating scale. And as you can see here, there's a point system for how stressed you are. So and then the number of points you get determines whether you're stressed or not, and whether it may be a source of illness, including depression, if it's too excessive. So let's take a scenario here. I put in here 63, so I'll put in here jail term, which is essentially what some people feel like right now. They're in jail. They're not allowed out. They used to have their, 10-kilometer run. They can't do that anymore. Or through, at least through the route that they normally took. They'd go around in circles, no more than 2 kilometers from your house. So jail term could now be replaced with the social isolation. So that's if you're on your own, that's pretty severe. 63 points. There's a lot of people ill now in hospital. There's the worry of someone becoming ill, which would almost be as bad as, say, getting bad news of a close family member dying. So these are highly stressful situations. Now we put on 63 there. So because of trouble at the restaurant, or you worked in a barber shop, or you were a locksmith, now you're laid off, and so you were either let go, or there's no word back about income. So you have to add that 263 now plus 47 now plus 38. So it's adding up now. The stresses are starting to mount. Okay, so you have a financial situation. You've still got bills to pay. Maybe you're renting. You've leased a property, or in your business, or maybe you're at home, you're renting. So you've got to find the money for that, or you have to get on to the landlord about that. You may not be you may not have the company of your kids. They may have already left, and now they're isolating, or they're with other people. So they may not be at home. So the pattern that you were used to is changing pattern. Add 29 for that. Your living conditions have changed, so that's another 25. Your work conditions have now changed. Add another 20 to that. So, and when you add it all up, then the Christmas or a vacation time is coming when things are expected from you. We'll add 12 to that, so you have 307. That is very, very seriously stressed. Now, many people can be fine all the way down to the change in work conditions. They can be handling stress, but then Christmas comes and it tips them over the balance. So people can be managing a lot of challenging situations, and then the final straw comes. So what I'm going to talk to you about in the rest of the slide is strategies so that you become resilient and that you're prepared for the unexpected. Because many people are running on a moderate risk, a moderate amount of stress, but then something happens and it's like the final straw. It could be something relatively small, like a vacation or a holiday, or a wedding that's now been postponed. That will take place later, but it could have been all the preparations for that, the money that put up for that, and bookings and complications with that. So it's often the final straw. So I'm going to show you techniques then that will allow you to be able to cope with all of this worry and stress, and will allow you to become empowered rather than disempowered. Now, the reason you can protect yourself from worry and stress is a property of the brain itself. The brain learns. It's constantly changing it. So we have 100, each one of those neurons makes about 10.
Sorry, Billy, you're just breaking up there.
Limited resources. That was one of the big issues, wasn't it, on the list of sources of stress? Limited broadband would be included in there. Anyway, okay. So neuroplasticity then is the ability of the brain to change these connections, these 100 trillion connections. So that's called learning. The making and breaking of these 100 trillion connections, the brain is learning. And that's how you learn. Now you can learn to become a warrior, and then the good news is you can unlearn it as well. So this is through neuroplasticity. So as you'll see here, neuroplasticity in 5 easy steps. An electric signal travels along a nerve. It can go in either of 2 directions, because it may have 2 particular contact points there. To go one of 2 ways. It can go via one route to connect to one type of nerve, a pathway, system or map. And if this pathway is used a lot, then the pathway is like a railway track. The train, which is the electrical signal, tends to always go along that track, so that track gets fixed. So if you're constantly worrying about the world, then everything worries you. Things that wouldn't normally worry you go onto that track, and that train of thought, it brings you to the worry station. So worry is a habit, and that habit molds your brain. Now, so you weren't born a worrier, but that's the way your strategy, your coping strategies is ineffective, by the way. It seems like you talk to warriors and they will convince you till the cows come home that worrying is effective. They find it does help them cope, but they are self-deluding themselves, because worry does not lead to action. And action is the only way to get out of the worry cycle. So if you have the habit, going to point number 3, of worrying, you'll create a worry circuit in your brain. It's created, that's neuroplasticity. Equally, point number 5, if you decide to think another way, or to maybe go for a walk, or to engage in something that distracts you from worry and anxiety, because distraction is skill in itself. And you can actually turn distraction from worry into a lifestyle, pay yourself a lot of money and have a good lifestyle. So that's where the intelligence comes in. And equally, if you use a new pathway that rebuilds itself, like if you want to paint, you want to do gardening, you want to plant an orchard, these will distract you away from the worrying, and they create new interests and lay down new tracks in your brain. And that is neuroplasticity. It's as simple as that. Now you have the information. This information wasn't available up until the year 2000. So the brain was thought to be static. In other words, it wasn't thought to change that much over lifetime, a bit like your heart or your kidneys. But now we know the brain is very different. It's constantly changing shape. It's plastic. I know that some plastics are hard, but the idea, the scientific word for plastic is moldable. The brain is moldable. So unlike the other organs in your body, the brain changes its pathways. And if you change the pathways, I'll show you how to do that, particularly in the frontal lobes, which regulate emotion. You strengthen those pathways, you will gain control over worry and stress. And so here's someone who learned to juggle, for instance. They bought 3 oranges in Dunnes Stores, left them on their bedside table, and every morning for 6 weeks, they were asked to juggle for 5 minutes before they had breakfast, to get out of bed, sit on the side of the bed, juggle for 5 minutes for 6 weeks, including weekends. At the end of 6 weeks, then their brains were scanned. Before they started, their brains were scanned. At the end of the 6 weeks training, the brains were scanned, and they compared the difference. And lo and behold, with 6 weeks of 5-minute training, even if that person is still not very good at juggling, mediocre juggler, the brain structure has changed. You see it there near the visual area at the back? The hand-eye coordination center starts to thicken out and grow. So new circuits are laid down because of a new behavior or a new pastime. It takes 6 weeks on average to rewire the brain. So it's one thing to decide to do something, go on a diet, take physical exercise, but you need to do this for 6 weeks to really become, for it to become part of your brain. So you can't give up halfway. So a lot of decision making is about spending a lot of the process is taking a long time to make up your mind. Take as long as you like. But once you make up your mind that you're going to do something, you must spend at least 6 weeks doing it. You can't break up because it's not fully integrated into you. This person did not become a juggler until after 6 weeks. Then juggling was in them. Do you understand? Juggling was in them. Even if they were a mediocre juggler, juggling was in them at that stage. So I'm going to show you now techniques to develop a different part of the brain than this area. This is the parietal, the occipital area, which is involved in hand-eye coordination. We're going to focus on the frontal lobes. You see them there? The frontal lobes. There are techniques you can do that will enhance, strengthen the frontal lobes. And you know, with a strong set of frontal lobes, you can control the amygdala, one on the left and one on the right. You have two lobes, frontal lobes, one on the left, and they correspondingly put a brake on the amygdala, which is involved, it's like the fire alarm, which is involved in alerting, over-alerting you to stress, real or imaginary. So how do we do that? How do you rewire your brain? Well, you have to focus your intention. Attention is found here in the frontal lobes, focused attention. So the more you focus your attention, the more you strengthen your frontal lobes. So for 5 minutes or 10 minutes a day, you do an attention exercise. Now, meditation has been proposed as a technique for this. And what is meditation? Simply put, meditation is paying attention, usually to your breath, on purpose. So it's not like falling asleep. It's an alert attention, a behavior experiment. So paying attention on purpose. And here's the killer, without judgment. The frontal lobe tends to use a lot of your thought processes, particularly about strategies and judgment and what happened to you and who said this to you and why they shouldn't have said it to you. And so the frontal lobes kind of process a lot of strategy. And so what you do is you have to get a hold of the frontal lobes by paying attention, usually to your breath, 5 minutes a day, on purpose. And the hard bit is without judgment. You can't be hijacked by your worries, for instance, or you're upset with other people or the world or whatever. You can allow them to come in while you're focusing on your breath, but you can't entertain them. And they're just electrical impulses and they'll dissipate. If they're not given the track to travel on, because now you're attending, then the trains will not reach their destination into the worry center. So focus your attention. So I'll come back to this slide as we go through exercise, nutrition, and determination as strategies to defeat worry and stress. But mindset is mindset then is, it's important that you develop a mindset where you can focus your attention when you need to. That your mind is not hijacked by worry and stress. So an exercise for the frontal lobe. So rather than showing you a scientific slide of Buddhist monks meditating, I'll just show you here one of the best examples of how you can rewire your frontal lobes using focused attention. And in this exercise, which takes no longer than 10 minutes, you do 3 attention exercises. So it's a bit like, this is your attention muscle, it's your frontal lobe, I'm using the muscle in my arm here, your frontal lobe, and you do a 1, 2, 3, and you do that for 10 minutes a day. 1 the next day, 2, 3, and then on the third day, 1, 2, 3. So you are doing 3 focused attentions in 10 minutes, 3 minutes each, roughly. So why do you want to do this? Well, a lot of emotional distress, preoccupation with your own thoughts is in the frontal lobe, and that sets off the amygdala, and you get the hyperventilation, you get the digestive problems, stomach upsets, irritable bowel syndrome. I'm not saying that that's the only cause of these illnesses, there are other issues, but certainly your overstressed body leaves you exposed to these conditions, these stress-related conditions. So preoccupation with your thoughts. So what you want to do is now become preoccupied with attention on one issue at a time. But there are 3 separate issues here. The first is 3 minutes. Point number 1, attending to your breath. Excuse me. Point number 1, 3 minutes, attending to your brain. Point number 1, attending to your brain. So what's here? Receiving experiences, it is the sense of smell, the sense of taste, the sense of touch, the activity of your mind. You ask yourself, is my mind busy? Is it calm? What was bothering me now? What am I upset with? What's my emotional tone at the moment? So you're interrogating yourself. So the brain is now the focus. So you do 3 minutes of that. Then you gently switch, and always do it gently, and as the Buddhists would say, with loving compassion, which is the hydraulic oil in all of this, compassion and gentleness. You switch, you focus your attention onto your breath. So point number 1, you focused on your brain for 3 minutes, the senses, seeing, hearing, touching, tasting, smelling. By the way, I'll bring you a slide to the book where I got this, so you can follow up on this. So you've done 3 minutes in your brain. Now you're focusing on your breath. So focusing on just the sensation of your breath moving past your nose. So breathing in, count to 4. Breathing out, count to 4. Breathing in again, count to 4. Breathing out, count, and your focus is on the tip of your nose, feeling the breath, feeling the air leaving and entering. With each inspiration and expiration, 3 minutes of that. So you have done first the brain, the taste, touch, your emotions. Now you've gone on to the breath, focusing on your breathing. And the final 3 minutes then is now focusing, as you can see, they're expanding the focus to experience your body in the room, sitting on the chair or on the ground, the shape of your body, where your toes are, where the soles of your feet are, what's your posture, what's your facial expression. You can do all of this with your eyes open or eyes closed. The space your body takes up, where your body is in the room, and just only the focus. That's the only focus. You have 3 separate focuses going on. 1, the brain, 3 minutes. 2, the breath, 3 minutes. Finally, back to the context, if you like, where you are. And then you snap out of it. And that's your 10 minutes of frontal lobe exercise. You do that 10 minutes a day for 6 weeks, including weekends, for 6 weeks. And then you can make your decision whether this works for you or not. But don't give up in the middle, because it, as I said, with the juggler, it takes 6 weeks for the wiring to fix. So take a long time deciding and find the right book or the right instruction, the right guide, a YouTube guide, one you like, and then stay with it. So I'll give you more information on the book that I got that in. I thought that was very interesting, and it's a great mental exercise. Now, 15% of the population, that's 15 in 100, do not respond to this type of the meditation that I just talked about. So 15 in 100 is a lot of people. So 15 in 100 people don't respond to meditation. They don't respond to autosuggestion. They don't respond to hypnosis. They don't respond to self-help. They don't respond to psychotherapy. They are perfectly normal. They may be yourself, your brother, your sister, your parents, or people around you. They have other mechanisms in their lives that help them to manage stress, or maybe they don't get bothered by the stress you get bothered by in the first place. Nobody's the same. But it's important to note that 15 in 100 do not get a benefit from focused attention in terms of emotional regulation. You may be one of them, because, you know, you hear a lot of people say, oh, we go down on Tuesday, we go to a meditation session, come down, you love it, and you go down and you're there and you're going, what the hell is this all about? And you go home and you're not, now you're even more alone and isolated, because there must be something wrong with me. They're all getting a great buzz out of this. Why would I? Well, you're one of the 15 in 100. So there's nothing wrong with you. So it's just for everyone to be aware that when they do, if you are one of the 85 in 100, the 85% where it does work, that's good. You're lucky. You have a drug-free way of controlling emotion. It does involve discipline, 10 minutes a day for at least 6 weeks, focused attention exercise. So you are lucky, but don't presume that everyone else around you, your friends, it works for them, because 15 in 100, it doesn't. But here, for the ones who, for meditation doesn't work, here is a technique you can use. So another powerful way of bringing your mind into the present moment is to stop and ask yourself, what am I thinking now? What am I feeling now? So in a way, what this is doing is it's saying, your amygdala is setting off emotions. You're worrying about imaginary things and you're worrying your amygdala. So what you do is you go to your frontal lobes and you ask these questions. What am I thinking now? What am I feeling? This is what the frontal lobe is involved in, strategies, questions. But it's interrogating now the amygdala. So what am I thinking now at this moment? And then answer that. And then what am I feeling now? And then answer that. And suddenly, you take the power away from the amygdala. Your frontal lobes are now asking the questions. So the moment you ask these questions, you interrupt the emotional tone in your brain, whatever is hijacking you. You may have to do this hundreds of times each day in the beginning, because this horse had no jockey and has been running around the field for years. So now you are asking the question, if the jockey is asking the question of the horse, and that can take a lot of checking the horse, and so up to 100 times a day in the beginning, but less and less over time. So you cognitively interrupt the emotion. So that's for someone who finds meditation that doesn't work. And meditation is extremely powerful, and you can try both, of course. So you could be out walking, for instance, and you go for a nice walk, the sun is out, and suddenly you get upset about something that happened. Somebody said something to you, and you can't lie down and do a focused meditation. So this is a fast way of defusing the situation. What am I thinking now? And then interrogate it. What am I feeling now? And interrogate. By doing that, you interrupt the emotional distress, and you bring yourself back into control. Okay, so that's important now for the 15 in 100 where meditation doesn't work. So exercise, physical and mental. So we're hunter-gatherers. We're hunter-gatherers by nature. So that's our lineage. Our ancestors were successful hunter-gatherers, and that's why we're here today. The ones who weren't successful hunter-gatherers, they didn't have any offspring. They died of starvation, they're not here. So we are the offspring of successful hunter-gatherers. So our grandparents would have walked 18 miles a day to the well for water, into town for food or whatever, out to the field, down to the stream, back. And the word physical exercise wasn't in their lexicon. You went into their houses, there was a table and chairs. So you sat down to eat. There were no sofas. No sofas. You maybe sat at the fire to warm up before you went to bed, and that was it. There were no sofas. So we are hunter-gatherers. We are actually happiest when we are moving physically. So we know that exercise increases the production of neurons in your brain, the growth of neurons. And this growth of neurons occurs, and you see the amygdala there in red. Do you remember I talked about the amygdala as the fire alarm? Well, just behind the amygdala is that green area about the size of your thumb, one on the left, one on the right. These are the lobes just beside your ears. It's called the hippocampus. Well, physical exercise activates the hippocampus to produce neurons. Each new neuron has 10,000 connections, so it increases your intelligence for a start, because now you have more neurons, they have 10,000 connections, so you can learn more things. So Exercise increases neurogenesis, the growth of neurons in the hippocampus, a region important for memory and mood control, because you can see the hippocampus is actually regulating the amygdala as well. So you can learn new coping strategies right down there beside the amygdala, rather than up at the frontal lobes. So physical exercise is actually fast tracking the wiring of your, providing of course you're doing physical exercise combined with other things in your life, like practicing focused attention, or even better, putting focused attention into physical exercise itself. And there's a cross section through the hippocampus on the slide on the right. One on the left, you have one on the left and one on the right, two lobes, so they're cut. And when you cut them, they look like a bit like a Swiss roll, and they have different layers. The hippocampus is different, that's the green area there on the left. The hippocampus is when it's cut down like it has the appearance of a Swiss roll. It's got many curves and layers inside it. And we know that the physical exercise increases the growth of neurons in this part of the hippocampus, the lower part there. Now, as you get older, you tend to lose your memory more. So just as an aside, as you get older, you tend to lose your memory. Your hippocampus gets a little bit inefficient at creating these new memories, new neurons. But when you take exercise, you can see the warmer colors indicate nerve growth factor growth in the lower end of the hippocampus, then which can improve your memory. So if you're older and you're losing your memory, if you can't remember where your keys were, then you take more exercise and you will be able to remember. So being physically active means you're more mentally alert. Now the upper end of the hippocampus, the top end that you're showing it there, is an area affected in Alzheimer's disease. So that's a separate area and that's a separate illness. But memory loss is a part of aging. Alzheimer's disease is a more extreme version of that. Many people who over the age of 40 and 50 can't remember where they put their keys or can't remember a person's name. They think they're getting Alzheimer's disease. No, what they need to do is take more physical exercise, and their memory will become more efficient because they create more neurons in their hippocampus. It's well known that people take more physical exercise are less prone to get Alzheimer's disease as well. So combining physical and mental exercise, that's the best of all worlds, because you have the physical exercise and you have the focused attention. So if you can combine physical exercise with focused attention, as many athletes do, they go into a kind of a trance when they run. Either the sounds of their feet, the sound of their feet on the pavement, but they completely, or their heartbeat, or their breath. Many athletes focus on their breath, particularly swimmers, and that kind of puts them in a completely focused state where they take control over their body, including how fast or slow they would swim, and they get their personal bests when they need to in training. So combining physical and mental exercise is the best. Now, I put this slide up. It looks a bit humorous, but actually it's quite serious. When a lot of soldiers came back from the First World War, they had what's called PTSD, an extreme form of anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, which is like an anxiety. Something happened to them. They saw something happen to their friends, usually to their colleagues, and they were helpless, and they became extremely stressed by that, and it kind of imprinted on their amygdala. Their amygdala became super sensitive. So they might be 20 years later driving along the road and a plastic bag would roll out in front of them and they'd drive over it and there'd be a bang, and suddenly that would remind them of the explosion and they'd go hyperventilate and they would go into an extremely stressful state. PTSD is not fatal, won't kill you. You think you're going to die, but it is extremely distressing and can be prolonged for years after the initial event. So many of these soldiers came back, couldn't function in society, so they were put in convalescent homes. And it was discovered that one of the most effective treatments for extreme anxiety, PTSD, chronic anxiety, was knitting. And many of these soldiers were then put to work on knitting tents, canvas tents, sails for ships, nets for sailing ships. And it was found that the combination of the physical exercise of knitting these fabrics and of the focused attention together of actually following a pattern alleviated the anxiety. So it was discovered that knitting was a very, very powerful anti-anxiety because it's focused attention and it's physical exercise combined. Now, many people try knitting and they end up watching EastEnders or Hollyoaks while they're knitting, and they find that it becomes less therapeutic. So if you find that your anxiety keeps running away, or your worries keep running away from you, then you switch to crochet. Because with crochet, the pattern is not repeating. The pattern changes every few steps. So you have to completely focus on crochet. You can't watch TV and do crochet. And so knitting for anxiety, mild anxiety, crochet for severe anxiety. And 10 minutes a day, 6 weeks or 6 years or 60 years, many people do it and they find it extremely empowering. And at the end of it, they have a pair of socks or a jumper. So they've not only got rid of their worry, but they have produced something empowering. So it sounds trivial, but it's combining physical and mental exercise. Learning a second language is another one. Learning a second language is all about connecting with people. It's very empowering. So that's another thing you could do online, learn a second language. Physical exercise and mental exercise are both very important. And nutrition, diet affects your brain, your brain's ability to learn, including new coping mechanisms to deal with the worry and the anxiety and the stress, social isolation. Your brain has to now learn something it couldn't anticipate before. And in order to learn, it needs to rewire. Now, we know that there on the right, that the connections between the neurons, called synapses, you have 100 trillion of them, that they are plastic, that they change connections. And that's what we call learning. The ones that are inefficient weaken, and the ones that are efficient strengthen. And you have 100 trillion of them. And the skin of these neurons at the connection point is made of fat, a particular type of fat. It's not the fat that's down at your belly. That's lard. That fat is there for energy. When you need energy, it's the peat briquettes, it's coal storage fat. But the fat that's in your brain cells is a liquid fat. It's liquid in the fridge. So any fat or oil and fat are the same thing. Oils or fats that are liquid in the fridge, that are still liquid, not fixed, not lard, then those types of fats are very healthy for your brain, because your brain is constantly reshaping itself. It needs a flexible form of oil. It needs a liquid fat, not a solid fat that's at your belly button. It doesn't need that kind of fat. So the types of fat you eat are very important for your brain. You need to eat lean meat, fruit, plant and fish oil, sunflower oil and fish oil. Fish oil is the elite oil for the brain. Because the fish oil, it doesn't solidify. Even in a fridge, it's still an oil, and that means that the fish oil type fats increase intelligence and coping mechanism. So you need to eat fish at least once a week. You can go to Aldi. It's the cheapest form of protein you can get in Aldi for 60 or 70 cents. You can get mackerel, sardines, herrings in sunflower oil. Buy them in sunflower oil. Don't buy them in brine, which is seawater. Buy them in plant oil. So fish in plant oil, and eat that on toast once a week. And that will have an effect on your brain. Your brain will thank you for that. Combined with meditation, combined with physical exercise, and you're in a totally new area of intelligence in your brain in terms of plasticity and learning new coping strategies. Of course, you have to have the right program. You have to have the right information, and I'm giving you that information right now so you can act on it. So there's on the left-hand side, the good and the bad types of oil or fats you can eat. So the bad ones are the mustard color ones. So at the bottom there, coconut oil can have a lot of that lard, that mustard colored lard, butter fat, cooking, beef tallow, lard, not good. That's for your belly button. That's the fat on your belly, but you need liquid fat, which are the other colors, the blues, the greens, and the yellows. The elite fat of all is the green one there. The green fat is the omega-3, and that it's fish is not shown here. I'm just showing you plant oils. Fish oil is the elite plant food. Don't go buying the little tablets, you know, cod liver oil. Eat fish once a week, oily fish, small cold water fish, sardines, mackerel, herrings, sprats, small cold water fish. Tuna, I'm not so sure about it. So live to 40 years of age, and there can be a lot of impurities in tuna. It lives a long time. You want fish don't live too long, maybe up to 3-4 months. So herrings, mackerel, sardines in sunflower oil, they're the healthiest brain food you can buy, and they're dead cheap. So develop a taste for fish once a week. We have a big problem now with metabolic syndrome. It's a fancy medical term for fat around the waist. That would be the lard. That's the solid fat, not the liquid fat, around the waist. High blood fat, high blood cholesterol is lots of fat in the blood because you're eating too much fatty foods, which are full of this bad fat, lard, the butter fat, animal fats. You want plant oils and fish instead. And you can get high blood pressure, too much fat, too much. The heart has to work extra hard, not just pumping around blood now, it's pumping around fats that are solidifying and blocking channels. So this can lead to reduced IQ. So this is the obesity epidemic. And they wonder why there's an explosion in anxiety in the young people. Well, if they're sitting on the sofa eating crisps and drinking Coke and Fanta, watching TV all day, of course they're going to get anxious. We're hunter-gatherers. We're not meant, we've just got too smart now. We've got too clever entirely about our downtime. Our downtime should be out in the garden, walking around, actively doing things. Okay, so, and finally, determination, just coming to the end. Determination, perseverance is the key. So never give up. Now, do you notice this slide? It's quite a detailed slide, this figure here. Do you notice what you see here? You see the bird? And the bird has been out hunting. And it's taken hours. It stalks its prey. And it spotted this frog who wasn't just minding its own business. And then it ambushed the frog and tried to swallow it. But look what the frog has done. So that's what this talk is about. This talk is about you knowing that you always have the final word when it comes to your anxieties. They can stalk you, they can worry you, but ultimately you will decide whether you become overwhelmed by them or not. And the talk I've just given you now and the strategies I've given you will enable you to do exactly this. Even at the last moment, you can still kill the worry, the doubt, the anxiety. So here are the tips again. MEND, meditation, exercise, nutrition, and determination. So the acronym there is MEND. And then I have another acronym, BRAIN. And these are the many things, you know, two human beings are the same. There are many, many ways. Some of us, meditation doesn't work. Others, they thrive on it. So no two human brains are the same. They're all uniquely wired up. So be curious, do an internet search. Don't browse the internet, search the internet. In other words, pick a topic, diamond mines of South Africa, and spend an hour investigating that topic. That's an internet search. Not a browse is where you just look at the headlines and then you might check your horoscope, and that's just boredom. You have to do a focused internet search once a day. If you're interested in the internet, then do a focused internet search. That is focused attention, that's the frontal lobes, and you also get more information about the world. So volunteer, learn a language, that's a mental exercise again. Make something, fix a bike, go down to the shed at the back of the garden, clean it up, organize it. So that's be curious. Reduce distress, try exercise, meditation, music, write a diary, a letter of joy, good company. And if you find that you can't enjoy company or your company is distressful for you, avoid distress. Remove yourself from the source of stress. If something is stressing you, remove yourself from the source of stress. You can do that physically by moving away from the stress, changing your bedroom because there's a light shining in at night and it can't sleep, or there's noise on one side of the house. You change your bedroom to the other side of the house where there isn't any noise. So, or if you can't remove yourself, then you try meditation and do a focused attention. So then you're at least in control in your response to the distress. You know it's distressful, but it's not dominating your life. It's something you can think about, strategies around it. So you're not defeated by the stress. Immerse yourself in those things you love doing. Now, so that applies to everybody has something they would love to do. Can you imagine if somebody said 3 months ago, you don't have to travel to work anymore. You can stay at home. And if you're lucky, we'll continue to pay you. You would think you'd won the jackpot. You'd won the lotto, because now you could go out and, do the garden or do the thing you've been putting off. Go and take out the easel and the pen and start painting and really hone your skills. So immerse yourself in the things you love doing. So turn this disadvantage into something empowering, and it may actually change the course of the rest of your life. And then finally, normalize your posture, take an optimistic outlook on life. Think positive thoughts. I know it sounds corny. Think positive thoughts, because believe it or not, your brain will believe anything you tell it. So be careful what you say to your brain, because your brain will believe you. So think positive thoughts. Even if you don't believe them, think positive thoughts and your brain will act on that. So finally, thank you for your patience. Read widely, especially nonfiction. You should read about 6 nonfiction books a year. You'll be able to get them on Kindle now. The libraries are closed. Here's a book, the book on the center there, Skills, Mindfulness. That's the Focused Attention Experiment. That's Sarah Silverton's book. You can source that and read it. I found that book helpful. It's a very simply written book. And that one is definitely a simple, effective, different types of meditation, suits different strategies. Different types of focused attention suit different people. So that book is interesting. You wanted to learn about emotional regulation, emotional intelligence, read Daniel Goleman's book, Emotional Intelligence, 400 densely packed pages. It's a paperback. It's one of the big sellers, the best self-help books ever written. I would buy it alone for chapter 3, which is on relationships. That's a book well worth reading. Just for chapter 3 alone, it's well worth the price of the book. He's written a number of books after that, Emotional Intelligence in Business, Emotional Intelligence in Leadership. But this original book, Daniel Goleman's book, Emotional Intelligence, is an outstanding classic, very easy to read. He explains the brain very well there. And then Man's Search for Meaning, Finding Meaning, meaning you have to manufacture meaning. Don't expect things to be meaningful handed to you on a plate. You know, we all have this existential crisis in our lives where we decide, why are we doing something? So we have to manufacture meaning. So it takes courage to manufacture meaning and commit yourself to a career or to a lifestyle. But the benefits are enormous. You connect with the world and you get value and you become empowered. So meaning is very important, and worry and stress can interfere with your ability to find and drive you into apathy. The worry and stress is different from thinking in a way. Thinking is about action, but worry is not about action. Worry is just for its own sake. It feeds on itself, and you end up doing nothing. So and preventing you from finding true meaning in life. So you need to deal with worry now and anxiety and stress ruthlessly by doing these exercises and adopting this lifestyle. So thank you for your attention, and I hope there's still some people left. I'll hand it back to you, Sive.
Hi, Billy. Thank you so much. There are still plenty of us left. That was a fantastic talk. Really, really interesting. Actually, learned quite a lot. I'm more than happy if anybody has any questions. please feel free to ask any questions. You can either use the chat and type it, or you can just unmute yourself if you'd like to ask any questions at all. It can be about anything.